There's actually some good talking points this week. It starts with Leon Edwards, your and still, right? From last week. He made an appearance on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani. And of course, what was on everybody's mind was what he thought of Dana essentially just giving Colby Covington the title fight. We talked about that, of course, on here a little bit last weekend. There's a clip on the YouTube channel. So if you would like to hear just that discussion, feel free to go check that out after this episode. With that being said, though, he said, Dominic, he will decline a fight with Colby Covington. Sort of speaking to, you could tell that there's a little bit of, originally that instead of having headlines, before there was multiple bullet points here, my headline read, "Payback is a Brit." Which
I love that. Funny. I did see that. Yeah.
So I wanted to throw that out there because I was like, damn it, I have to change it because it doesn't really fit with the rest of these. But that's what it felt like. It felt like he was kind of out for a little bit like, you know what? When I was, had all this big long winning streak, but nobody wanted to give me a fight. What did Colby Covington say? He said, "Who? Who's that?" Called him Leon Scott, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So now that Leon's got the title fight, Colby all of a sudden wants to fight him. And he's kind of like, no, fuck you. And I get that.
Yeah.
And, that's fine if he wants to do that. Problem is when everybody's like, hell yeah, because everybody was pissed about Colby getting the title fight. And I'm not saying there ain't good reason to be upset about it.
Dude, it's been the biggest talking point of the past week.
And I mean, because you rightfully do have a guy in Bilal Muhammad who is more deserving of it based off the current resumes, off the win streaks, But what's funny is everybody's like, hell yeah, Leon, he won't take this fight, not going to give Colby what he wants, going to stick it to the UFC. And then Leon goes, yeah, I think the right title fight for me next is Jorge Masvidal. Huh?
He had us in the first half.
I feel like there is some people out there. I can tell by the way, of course, Ariel and his crew acted about it because they were not against it. What it kind of comes down to, Dominic, is I feel like the UFC, when I really kind of simmered on this longer, because my thoughts when we talked about this on Monday, I was a little bit like, yeah, I wish he would go out and earn it a little more, but I kind of get it, right? Like I get what the UFC is doing.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect them to not go this direction. Like I was going to be kind of surprised if Bilal got the next title shot. Not that he doesn't deserve it. So if anything, I came off a little passive about the whole thing, probably compared to most people. But when I thought about it longer, I'm like, man, isn't it kind of dumb? I'm not trying to say I'm smarter than those guys, but isn't it kind of dumb to grant Colby, say he is getting the next title shot, when you have this big fight coming up with Masvidal Burns, which again, I'm not saying either of those guys should necessarily get the next shot, but it feels almost like promoter malpractice to say that fight has no stakes to it. That's what he said. There's no title shot on the line. Shouldn't you just let this build, let people speculate? Because Gilbert Burns with the win there feels like a guy who could also be in the title conversation. So that's been something weighing on my mind a little bit that I feel like I should have acknowledged but didn't. The bigger thing here, though, Dom, is I think the UFC giving Colby Covington the title fight was the perfect mix to piss both sides off. There's two sides to this debate, and Dana, by announcing this, has pissed both of them off. You have the side that want the more merit-based matchup with Bilal Muhammad. Well, Colby Covington's fought 4 times since the end of 2019. He's 2-2, the 2 losses, close title fights, but the 2 wins against, Jorge Masvidal and Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley no longer in the UFC. Bilal Muhammad, meanwhile, has this very long unbeaten streak because he's got the no contest with Leon. But then you have the other side who is fine with, let's go for the biggest fight, the most exciting fight, the biggest storyline. Well, Dominic, that doesn't point to Colby Covington. That points to Jorge Masvidal if he wins that fight on UFC 287. So then you have those people going, well, why is Colby getting the fight? Jorge, Leon, 3-piece and a soda. It makes sense. So somehow they did the worst of both.
Yeah. And you've made really good points, especially they kind of put the UFC as they put themselves in a weird spot because you literally just you had to wait 2 weeks. Just wait 2 weeks. Don't say
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, like Colby, was back up, flew to London, made the weight. That's cool. He's in the discussions, obviously, if
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that. But don't say anything, because then you've got speculation. You've got more importance on Burns Masvidal. It's already important. It's a huge co-main event. That adds more importance because Gilbert can put a win streak together if he beats Masvidal. If Masvidal wins, whatever you want to say about the guy, a win over Gilbert Burns, that's a pretty solid win with the
And the
storyline with
storyline, and
Leon.
Leon outright
Yes.
going public saying that's who he wants to fight next. People would be like, no shot Masvidal somehow skips the line, right?
Yeah. And I know the storyline about Bilal is merit based, resume based. It's more than that. Him and Leon have fought each other before. It went to a no contest.
That's
There
true.
is
Yeah.
history there between those two. There are more storylines for Burns, Masvidal, and Bilal than there are for the man that's been, as of now, given the next title shot in Colby Covington.
Wow.
So
It's very interesting. I mean, again, do I think that either of the potential Leon Burns or Leon Bilal fights are bigger, are going to do more buzz, are going to do more in pay-per-view buys if it's headlining, of course, versus Leon Colby? No, but you do raise a good point that it's not like Bilal is strictly a merit-based argument either. I mean, there is a little bit of history there. So this is my thing because I was sort of in this sort of middle ground on Monday, strictly because I was like, look, I understand the UFC. I feel like the UFC took it as we want a fight that's going to sell. And we know Colby's going to go out on social media. He's going to say a lot of crazy shit, maybe some stuff we don't want to say, about people who work for the company. We'll get to that. He's going to really sell it. It's going to be a great lead up. We're probably going to do a pretty good number on pay-per-view. Social media is going to be buzzing, especially if Leon wins. If Colby wins, potentially you set up God forbid if Conor McGregor were to knock out Michael
I've
Chandler,
seen
all of a
people say
sudden,
that.
all of a sudden you have that fight, which the two of those guys going at it's just going to create this huge buzz. So I understand that. And they're like, but he's also a guy that's like at the top of the rankings. He's fought for the title twice. He's coming off the win over Masvidal, big grudge match, also a main event of a pay-per-view. So I feel like they looked at it as like the middle ground. But unfortunately, they've just pissed off everybody.
Yeah.
They wanted something that was more merit than Masvidal, but also more star power than Bilal. And instead, it's just made everybody angry. So I think it was just not the right move. I'm not saying it would have changed anything. If Masvidal goes in there and knocks out Burns, Colby probably still has a bigger right to fighting for a title than Masvidal is. He just beat him a year ago. And maybe we could debate that because a win over Burns, that's a pretty good win.
Yeah.
But also, doesn't that elevate Colby's win over Masvidal?
Right.
I mean, it just gets confusing, So that's why it's all like, it just feels like we should have just waited instead of just announcing it. What? This is not out of character for Dana. What is Dana White's biggest quote? I don't make fights the night of the fight.
Yeah.
Like,
and of course,
why did this fight have to get made? What was so special about this one? This man, they were basically announcing everywhere that John Jones Stipe was done deal after the card, and Dana wouldn't even commit to that. But Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards is so big, so massive, it's got to be booked now.
Yeah.
It's a little
Can
weird.
I ask you one question?
Yeah. What is it?
Because you talked about how if Masvidal beats Burns, isn't that a bigger win than Colby beating Jorge? But Jorge's, I get it. But if Jorge beats Gilbert, what's bigger? Jorge Leon, Colby Leon? Which one?
I mean, it's Jorge Leon probably.
Because of the 3-piece in the soda from many moons ago?
I mean, again, we don't have a ton of numbers anymore to kind of back these up because the UFC don't normally release their pay-per-view buys anymore. So we're kind of left in the dark of actually how big of star power a lot of these guys have.
Yeah.
I know Jorge's losing streak here has kind of hurt his star power because, in 2019, that guy was, main evented a card with Nate Diaz, and it was for a fake belt, didn't even need a belt on it. It was just a fight that everybody wanted to see. Is Masvidal still at that level, of stardom? Probably not.
I feel like as a star, him and Colby are probably
I mean,
equal
they
playing
main
field
evented
now.
together a year ago.
Well, yeah, true.
And here's another weird thing that I always remember is, if I remember right, the rumor was that card didn't sell very well
I think so.
because Endeavor, during their like quarterly, whatever you call it, they were their quarterly update of the business, whatever,
Yeah,
to their investors. They're pointing out that UFC 274, which was Oliveira versus Gaethje, had sold over 400,000 pay-per-views. Well,
yeah,
if Colby and Jorge in the same time frame had sold more, wouldn't you have picked that one? So that told
right.
me that fight did less than 400,000, which also would make it kind of a disappointment, because I think that was a fight a lot of people thought would hit that 500 mark to
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
set a standard. But that doesn't it doesn't just hurt Jorge. It kind of hurts Colby's like perceived value.
hmm
Dana does seem to be a guy. You look at the reactions he does with Power Slap, where he doesn't care about the TV ratings. He cares about the social media, the how many retweets, how many likes, how many shares, all this stuff, how many views on TikTok, whatever. Colby, I think, generates more of that kind of buzz than Jorge
yeah,
does.
yeah,
And because of that, I feel like Dana's in this mindset right now where he values that over the literal like numbers that a pay-per-view generates. So I think he views Colby as the bigger star because social media would tell you he's a bigger star. But is social
mm,
media really painting the full picture? I don't know.
yeah. Very true.